Right, I think we'll kick off. So welcome everyone. My name's Kelly Pepworth. I'm the chair of the PRCA in the Southwest and also the MD of Speed Communications. We've got a really interesting session today. So we are going to be covering common myths in terms of perceptions of PR and the PR industry. So introverts needn't apply, women rule the roost, writing is king, and PR is a young person's game. So we're going to be looking at these common myths, how they've come about, and whether or not they are true. We've got a great range of panelists covering these 4 myths for them to debate and challenge. We're going to have approximately about 10 minutes on each one as a discussion. Obviously, we've got a set amount of time, and each one we could spend the whole session on, so they're so fascinating. But we're going to do about 10 minutes on each, and once we've covered all 4, we will focus on the questions. So there is a Q&A button on your Zoom. If you have a question on the conversation or for one of the speakers, can I ask that you put the name of the actual speaker at the beginning of the question and post it on the Q&A? And what we will do is, after we've got to the end of the 4 myths, we're going to come back to the questions and focus on the questions. So it's going to be a fast-paced session because we've got 4 myths to cover, lots of conversation. So I'm going to go through each one as a quick intro and introduce the speakers, and then we will kick off. So our first myth today: you have to be an extrovert to work in PR. So we have 2 speakers. We have Sarah Turner. Sarah's got 17 years experience in multiple specialisms, including journalism, internal communications, PR, digital, and content. She is leading the internal communications function for an innovative pilot in the Ministry of Justice using strategic and data-led communications to tackle the staffing crisis in prisons. So welcome, Sarah. And we also have Steph Brown. Steph Brown is an AD for Orchid, which is a full-service creative agency with offices in Jersey and Bristol. Steph's got more than 5 years experience in comms and marketing agency experience and is a committee member, as is Sarah, actually, for the PRCA in the Southwest. So you have to be outgoing, talkative, sociable, and love to be in the limelight to be in PR. Is this true? So I was hoping you could discuss your experiences as extroverts or introverts in the PR industry from day one and what it means to be on either end of the spectrum or in between. So Sarah, you have to be an extrovert to work in PR. Is that true?
Stand out, no, because I'm not one, and it is the biggest kept secret amongst probably my colleagues and team members. I am an introvert. I don't display as one. I think everyone will be quite surprised. In fact, when I do talk about it, everyone says, no, I don't believe you. But the secret is that at the end of a busy day, when there's been lots going on, all I want is some sweet silence and to be on my own. So I am a raging introvert. And actually, I think it makes me an excellent communicator. So that's me. What about you, Steph?
Yeah, I'm similar actually. I think when people meet me, they might think I'm quite outgoing, quite talkative, which I am, and I really enjoy being. But I definitely have a social battery that has to be kind of recharged ever so often. So I do thrive in social situations, and I do love a networking event and going out. But there are times where I have to listen to my own body and kind of my own mind as well, and take much needed breaks.
It's a really great way of describing it. And I think I didn't even realize myself that I was an introvert until I went on a sort of a management course, and they were talking about, well, you obviously the first rule of being a manager is knowing yourself. If you know yourself, then you can better manage your team. And they described this definition of an introvert as being sort of, how do you recharge your battery, Steph, as you talked about. And I think I was just really surprised, because my understanding of being an introvert was basically that you never went out and you sat in your pajamas in like a cupboard for your entire life. So I think there is something about what we think of when we think of what it means to be an introvert and an extrovert. Would you agree, Steph?
Definitely. And I think the idea comes from in PR that we all have to be extroverts, because PR is about communication, and communication is about talking and going out there. So to work in PR and to be successful in PR, then you need to go out, you need to be extroverted, you need to love nothing more than talking. But actually, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think introverts and extroverts both hold such brilliant skill sets, you know, differently, that make them brilliant communicators on their own. So, you know, good communicators can stand up in a room and talk in front of thousands of people and talk passionately and thrive in team settings, but good communicators can also sit quietly and listen and take things in. So I think it's really important that we not only know kind of about ourselves when we go into PR and what we're good at and what we need, but also teams to be made up of extroverts and introverts as well, because that diversity is so important.
I completely agree. And I think that line about listening, actually all communication is two-way, and we must spend half our time listening if we're to make the sort of the most appropriate response. And I think that's the same for internal communications, for media relations work. You know, we need to listen to what the journalist wants if we're to give them the story that they're actually going to publish.
Definitely. I think it goes beyond media as well. I think, as Sarah, you're probably better placed to talk about this than me, being in a leadership role. But I think it's so important as well from an internal comms perspective and how we communicate with our teams, you know, and listening is so crucial if we're to support the people around us.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And as an internal communications professional at the moment, I think a lot of my time is spent coaching senior leaders in how to, you know, it's authentic leadership. It's not saying that you need to lead in any particular way, but you need to be authentic to yourself. I feel like we ought to spend a little bit of time on those sort of skills that introverts and extroverts have. And I know you've got some thoughts on that, Steph.
Definitely. So I think let's think about extroverts first. You know, they're brilliant at building relationships. They're the first people to be able to talk to. They're usually very happy to have brilliant conversations, which is fantastic. They're confident public speakers. They're highly sociable. And then you kind of look at introverts, and they're also brilliant at building relationships. So there's crossover in skill, and the crossover in skill comes from introverts being very good listeners. Usually they're very dependable and cautious and have a very keen eye for detail. So I think the important thing to think about here is, whilst the skills are different, the overarching what we're good at as communicators, whether an extrovert or introvert, is very similar. So I think my overall point is, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, you will thrive in PR and marketing, because you'll be able to bring something to the table that will make you fantastic at what you do.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I feel like a diverse team is a mix of those skills and those strengths across the board. It takes 10 people to come up with a good idea. A single idea from one person is usually missing something, because everyone has a sort of a black hole or a kind of a blind spot where they don't quite see things. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
As with anything, having a mix in a team is crucial, because everyone's going to have different experiences, different thoughts, feelings, you know. So it's so crucial that your team is made up of extroverts and introverts in order to be fully successful.
I wondered as well, like, where does this myth come from? Like, where do we think, why is it that, you know, communicators are supposed to be extroverts?
Gosh, probably the media a lot. You know, you think of whenever I think of PR and I think of telly, I think of, you know, Sex and the City, and it's always the outgoing extrovert networking. That's very much painted the picture of PR being very glitz and glam and networking. So I think media definitely plays a role in that. But I think it goes back to what I initially said as well. It's the idea that we all are communicators, therefore the idea being that we should all be able to talk and communicate really well. And maybe the myth is that to do that you need to be extroverted, but I don't think that's necessarily the case.
I wonder whether it's well. Oh, well, me, yeah. Jumping in there. I wonder whether as well it's that case that they always say that what the cobbler's shoes are always the worst. It's like, you know, we're so busy spending our time helping others to communicate, but you know, the work that goes in behind the scenes to successful communications is absolutely vast. And I think we've all experienced that kind of struggle for the seat at the table, trying to say to someone, oh, I need a poster, and you're like, no, you don't. You need an event, you need an engagement session. It's really hard to kind of get sort of the public at large and our clients out of this thinking of give me the product rather than give me the problem. And I wonder whether this is sort of symptomatic of that. We need to do a better job of PR and PR.
Potentially. And I think this is where, you know, events like this are so crucial, because it's important that we bring to the table that, you know, you and I are both really successful in our role, but we're both introverts and we both enjoy a bit of quiet and downtime, which is crucial. But at the same time, it's so important that extroverts also sit around the table because, like we've said, they bring so many different skill sets. So yeah, I agree. We definitely need to PR a bit more to showcase that so many people will be brilliant at the job.
So perhaps we should spend a little bit of time in thinking about sort of what makes that sort of successful working life for both in extroverts and introverts. I think for me, sort of hybrid working has been a real game changer, not only as a parent with 3 children, needing to be in multiple places at once, but also loving to spend face-to-face time with people. The team that I lead is national. It's based across the country. We can't physically be in the same place more than about once a month. But I do have to confess that the option of working from home and spending time in my kitchen, I find really restorative. And I think that's probably the introvert in me. I don't know, Steph, how you feel about that.
I think it's just as the world has moved on, it's about more people being able to be more honest about what it is that they need to be really brilliant at their job. And I think that's something that's really positive as we've moved forward. You know, there's now far more many open conversations between managers and their teams about, okay, well, what do you need as a person, as an individual, to thrive in the office? And I know that that's something that's happening a lot more, which is fantastic. And I think whatever works for you, that's what you need to do, and that's what you need to communicate. And I think there's so much more space now for those conversations, which I'm just loving seeing, really, because I think that's how the industry will thrive, on honesty and openness and just being true to who we are.
I completely agree, Steph. And looking towards that sort of future generation of newcomers into the industry, they expect diversity and inclusion to be built in, to be baked into the way that businesses operate. So both in terms of a brand and how they're going to talk to the world, they need to think about it, but also in terms of those future communicators coming into our industry, we need to be diverse and inclusive from the minute they step through the door. I think that probably rounds us up, Kelly. Is there have you got any questions for us, or we can move on to the next one? There'll be questions at the end.
We'll move on to the next myth, and we have got a question that's come up, but we'll address that at the end. But thank you both. That was really interesting, and really emphasised that there is a place for introverts and extroverts in PR. We need to be more vocal about that in terms of the diversity of our teams and how valuable that is to our organisations. So thank you both. So our second myth: women are better at PR. So we have 2 speakers. We have Billy. Billy has a wealth of PR and communications experience, from marketing, the forerunner of Wall's Magnum ice creams, through to PR roles in public and private sector, working for charities and supporting charities such as Shelter and Amnesty International, local councils and national government. Billy now runs Arrow PR Marketing, a small bespoke agency for advanced engineering and science. And we also have Lindsay Complin. So Lindsay is the Global Communications Director for the George Institute of Global Health. She's worked in communications all her career, starting as a journalist, then working in-house, freelance, and for agencies, working for organisations such as Gatwick Airport and the British Heart Foundation. So welcome, Billy and Lindsay. Communications has often been labelled as a woman's domain. The PR census in 2021 showed the industry is predominantly female, so 67% of our industry is female at that time. Do women naturally have a better aptitude for PR than men? And how do we achieve gender parity at all levels within our industry? So really interested on your thoughts of that, starting with Billy, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. It's quite an interesting issue, this very interesting question, not just professionally. I'm currently reading a brilliant book by a very famous feminist author who's throwing up various aspects on this. But it struck me that, having read this book, I did a little bit of research, and I Googled, PR as a function of communications. I Googled men are better at communications, and had a look at what the results were, and there were 5.4 million Google finds on men are better at communication than women. I then did the opposite and did women are better than men at communications. So the men figure was 5.4 million. The women figure was 1.5 billion. So 3 times the amount. So I'm not sure what that told me about the whole question of women are better at PR, but it certainly shows that there's a lot more interest in women are better than PR than men are better at PR. But anyway, throw that out there as an idea. And my experience is pretty mixed. The two best bosses I had ever in my long career, one was a man and one was a woman. The top slot goes to the woman, and she was very, very traditional. She was very nurturing and very supportive and helped to steer me on. The best male boss was again supportive but very directional. And the one time I made a major mess up getting a special advisor's name in a national newspaper when it shouldn't have been, he just gently steered me in a way and didn't make did it in a very, very professional way. On the other hand, the two worst bosses I've had, I've been again a man and a woman, and this time the bottom slot goes to the woman, and the man that was second worst because he couldn't make his mind up and was less directional. And the female worst boss was because she was a little bit too picky, and I felt she was at the beginning of her career. So I'm sort of open on this question. Lindsay, what about you?
So interesting, those Google figures, but that sort of shows that women perhaps are more interested in PR, and I wonder whether that's it. It's not that they're any better at it, but at the start of their career, they are perhaps more attracted to come into it. Certainly from my experience, wherever I've worked throughout my career, when I look around the office or the desk or the teams meeting around me, it's mainly ladies that I speak to. But then the further up the ladder you go, you end up speaking to more gentlemen than the ladies. So I'm not sure that women are any better at it. I think we are more. It's a career that perhaps women are more interested in to start with than when they start their careers. And going back to the comment that Sarah and Steph were making earlier about that perception of what PR is all about. I think probably women go for it because they feel it's something that's probably more aligned to what they want to do, and then perhaps the men stumble across it later on in life. And I think it saying that women are better at it than men is so broad, because the beauty of our profession and our industry is that it's so wide. There are so many aspects of PR and communications that you can do that I don't think you can possibly have that generalization. There is a very different approach and skills needed for real high-end consumer PR than there is for things like finance or tech or science. So there really is something for everyone. And I wonder whether, instead of the myth being, well, are women better at it than men, I think the most interesting question for me is, why do women come in it as a sort of at the beginning of their career, and why are there so many women at the beginning, and then as you start to go up the career ladder, they drop away, and then this is where the gentlemen come in.
Yeah, no, and I get that, and it's fairly well documented about leadership. The figures are almost flipped on their head, and I think that goes across not just the PR industry, but across industries, most industries generally. From FTSE 100 boards. For me, I think I'm interested in that, but I'm also interested in getting more men interested in coming in to PR, because I do think that there's a lack of focus on getting males into the profession. And when I go to the local schools to talk, it is mostly girls who are interested, and young women who are maybe doing their A levels who are coming forward and asking questions. Not the boys. The boys or the young men seem to be not as switched on as girls or women. And whether this is this feminist book that I'm writing about, where she makes the point that women are better communicators on one level than men, is the reason why women are drawn. I don't know, but I mean, coming back to another part of my experience, I talked about the bosses in my life, and the people, turning on the other side of it, the people who I'd managed in my teams. I can say there categorically that the best members of my team that I've had were, the 2 or 3 best ones were women, with one man almost getting his nose in. But that could be because I've only, the percentages are 30 to 70. I've had mostly women in my team, so it could be because of that. But the men were a little bit more different. They were very, very different. But they certainly weren't as, in my small sample, they certainly were not as skillful. So, I'm almost drawn towards it, but then I do think that the best PR practitioners can be men or women, and the worst PR practitioners are men or women.
That's it. The skills are the same. You've got to be a good listener. You've got to have empathy. You've got to be able to see a problem and come up with a solution around it. And that is equal of men and women. There'll be particular men and particular women that will be better at PR than other things, as they would in any other profession. And I wonder why it is that women tend to, at the beginning of their careers, come into this profession in greater numbers than men do. And again, referring back to previous speakers about that, maybe it is the perception of what PR and communications is all about, and that we do a terrible job of explaining how broad it is and how important it is and its business objectives, and that it's not some a sort of fluffy thing that might be quite easy for some for people to do, and I think we do a really bad job at explaining what PR is all about. But I think it is a serious question, because you do need to have that diversity, and you need to be able to bring in both sides of an argument, and in the way that people bring in different kinds of skills, then males and females are going to bring in different perceptions and different viewpoints, and any kind of communications or PR campaign is going to benefit from having a broader range of perspectives.
And your point about the perception of the PR industry, I think that's pretty incisive. And Steph mentioned the media profile with Sex and the City, and you go back a little bit further to Fab. Yeah, and then it was just that was just so atypical of the industry, but give a very, very strong perception of what we are.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Ellie.
Thank you both. Really, really interesting point. And my takeaway from it very much is it's about the skills of the individual, regardless of the gender. It's about the opportunities that's afforded to them by the environments that they're working in, about the role models that they are have the opportunity to work under or work with. And also, obviously, a key point is around gender neutrality, in the sense that it's not male or female either. It's about individuals and creating environments to help them nurture and grow and bringing new talent in. So, my experience has been wonderful. PR practitioners of various genders, that's never been a point. It's actually about giving them the opportunity to thrive. So, and I think both of you sort of relayed that point, which was fantastic. So we're on to our third myth. If you can't write, PR is not the job for you. So we've got two great speakers. We've got Jim. Jim is a filmmaker and producer, brings a wealth of experience to his role. He leads the production team at Speed Communications, so I do know Jim well. His approach to content creation is inspired by a love of stories and the people that tell them, coupled with a cinematic sensibility when it comes to visuals. Jim has produced global campaigns for governments, B2B and consumer brands in both video and audio formats. And joining Jim, we have Julia. So Julia heads up Speed's digital team, working across the whole agency, across our B2B and B2C portfolio. She's got 16 years experience in digital strategy, digital PR, social media planning and digital advertising, and worked with a whole diverse range of brands such as Brita, Lego, Guinness and DMV. So press releases, white papers, video scripts, social media copy, plenty of what we do in PR relies on the written word. Does this mean that if you aren't a good writer, shouldn't come into PR as a career or in the industry? Really interested on your thoughts from this from different perspectives. So I'll pass over to Jim first.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, I suppose the most obvious place to start is to describe what we do within Speed. Julie and I, as Kelly says, both work for Speed and have done so for many years. And although writing comes into both of our roles and the roles of some of our team, it's certainly not an exclusive part of what we do. It's not the only thing we do by a long way. So I think probably a good place to start, Jules, if you're happy to answer this, is to describe your role and the function your team plays within our PR agency.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So really, my team is kind of the digital part of the agency. We sit at the heart of the agency. We don't really do PR, traditional PR, but what we do is help amplify the campaigns and the kind of concepts that PR teams do come up with for our clients. So there is some writing involved, especially when you look into kind of the social media function of my team, but a huge amount of it is not about writing, and it's not about being a good writer. It is about being able to kind of create digital advertising campaigns, for example, about being able to analyze those, so being good with kind of numbers and kind of that way of thinking, a really analytic way of thinking. It's a lot about strategy, which again plays into analytics and not so much into being a good writer. There's also kind of really technical things around SEO, around user experience. So again, it's not really about being a traditional great writer. We have lots of other people within the agency who can kind of perform that function in terms of just being really, really good writers. But I think as well, Jim, something that maybe we can talk about in a bit is what do we define as a good writer as well? Because I think that's a real spectrum of kind of talents.
I agree, and I think we'll come to that, because if we say it now, I'll forget what I've planned to say at this point. So I'm going to say that first. Just for clarity. So my team, we're a production team. We work for a PR agency, but we are producers. So I have on my team, I have a film crew, I have editors, I have camera experts, I have a production manager whose job is dominated by scheduling and timings and budgets and that kind of the job. As I say, I lead the team, so writing comes into my role, but I'm much more about the visual side of communication. The work that we do sits in PR campaigns. It's not divorced from PR. It is now, and perhaps Jules, you and I could talk. Another thing we could mention is about how PR has changed in the time that we've been with our agency. But we provide videos, we provide podcasts, we do written, we do visual materials, stills, we do white paper design, lots of things that supports the PR campaigns that our colleagues are working upon, and sometimes they're the central part of that PR campaign. But very little of it is sitting down writing press releases that might have been the case 10 years ago. So the range of skills within my team is incredibly broad, and working literally this week for me in the team are people who you would say are not expert writers. They don't need to be, because they're experts in lots of other really crucial skills, all of which contribute to this big thing of PR that we're all doing collectively as an agency. It's just a different aspect of that job.
Yeah, and I think, Jim, back to kind of, I think the point that Sarah made right at the top of the session about whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, really, it's all about being a good communicator. And, we've got people who are great communicators on paper, but then within my team and your team, we've got people who are great communicators in lots of other ways. Jim's got kind of fantastic videographers who know how to kind of communicate an idea or something that's originally been written down into kind of a beautiful film, and within my team we know how to take that kind of written content and turn it into something that is going to be really, really engaging, in a PPC ad or on a web page that's really going to drive, whether it's awareness or clicks or leads, for example. So that's kind of it is kind of thinking about the broader definition of what we consider to be good communication or good communicators.
And it speaks to an ever evolving definition of what PR actually is. I mean, you know, if you were to go back X number of years ago, then PR work would be dominated by press release writing and by dealing directly with journalists and publications, and that still happens, and that's still a crucial part of some of what Speed does. But it's much more of a plural picture now. Just, I think, you know, and you can talk to other agencies within the marketing mix who will say the same thing, that those sort of traditional marketing silos are much less defined than they have been in the past, in that, you know, there is a need for content production in a significant way within PR. You know, the days of exclusively relying on mediators, on literally the media to get a client's message across to an audience is, as we all know, long gone. You know, through any number of digital means, that whole market has changed. And albeit, yes, as I say, within Speed, we still do specialist work in which trade publications and national newspapers are hugely important. But also, you know, that's clearly not the extent of what PR is now. It's a far more pluralized industry, and as such, we can welcome in people with far broader skills than perhaps would have once been the case. And as I say, I've seen within the teams that I've led, and sort of the ever evolving makeup of those teams, that, you know, we've got people from definitely different backgrounds who entered perhaps with no PR experience at all, but they're really good editors, and I need really good editors, and then we bring them into the PR world and we match those skills to the requirements of the agency. And I think you probably, without wishing to put words in your mouth, Julie, I think the same does apply in your side of the business.
Yeah, definitely. It does allow us, when we kind of break away from these very traditional ideas of what PR is, to start being able to look again beyond traditional ways of recruiting people and what a kind of a standard kind of CV should look like. I mentioned this to Jim the other day. A boss I had a long time ago, way before Speed, used to only look at CVs that were from people with a certain number of GCSEs, A-levels and a certain level of degree from a red brick university, which is madness, and I think probably also was faintly illegal then. But you know, now we are way beyond that, and we can look at CVs from people who have kind of natural passion and talent. You know, people who are just, like I mentioned before, just really great with kind of analytics and with understanding things like, you know, things like Google Analytics or numbers or whatever. And it doesn't have to be that you can do a written test and therefore we will take you on. And the same for you, Jim. And it also doesn't need to be about a very traditional career path anymore of having gone school, college, university, and then you go into some kind of graduate program or what graduate role. It can be very different, and I think that diversity of being able to recruit is so important, because you get a diversity of thought. And you know, Jim and I have been doing the jobs we do for a long time, and we probably would say that in some ways we might be a little bit stuck in our ways, but you know,
definitely
bring in new people who've got new ways of thinking about things, new ways of kind of bringing creativity to a role. So it gives us so much more opportunity than we had previously to really kind of diversify our teams and what we can do for our clients.
And as such, I think we need to be better at spreading that message. I think we need to be going, and again, Speed does a good job of this, and I would say that not just because my boss is on the call, but you know, Speed does do a good job of getting into colleges and to schools and to sort of reaching, you know, again, that sort of non-traditional marketing audience, or those that would naturally have a propensity towards marketing. And that's not to say we don't want, you know, we're not going to exclude people who've got a passion for PR, or, you know, who find that out about themselves early. That's absolutely great. And we still need great writers. The industry still needs great writers, but we're saying that's not an exclusive skill anymore. And we, as an industry, we do need to be better at getting into places and spreading that message that there are significant career opportunities and amazing experiences out there available for those with non-traditional marketing skills, and we welcome them, and we are made stronger for bringing them into our agency, and it reflects well on all of us, and it makes us better at our job and makes our clients happier. So, you know, it's a win-win-win situation.
Definitely. And I think if there's anyone on the call who's thinking, but I like writing, or like I do like writing, but I'm not sure where my talents are, I think as well, it's good to think about there are lots of different ways of being a writer. And I think we've got people within the business who are really kind of talented, sort of B2B technical writers who wouldn't be able to write a social post for a consumer brand to save their life, because it's just a completely different form of writing. So also the idea of being a good writer, I think you can look at that from lots of different angles and not necessarily pigeonhole yourself in one way, that I can write a press release about X in X way. So I think as well, you know, there's lots of different ways of looking at it, and it doesn't need to be kind of that you are just a broad good writer. I'm brilliant, I can write a novel, whatever. That's not the case at all.
I agree. We've run out of time. Kelly has a yellow hand in the air, but
right.
but yes, we're bad at timekeeping, good at PR. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
No, thank you both. I think really interesting in the sense of, you know, and really encouraging to talk about the changing sort of face of PR and the multiple type of skills and experience that can bring, the type of skills that you can grow, that writing obviously is part of, or can be part of, or not at all, actually, depending upon what role you take on. And I think what I'm overhearing in all of these sessions is, you know, we have a job to do as an industry to raise awareness of the fact that, you know, embracing the diversity of people, their skills, experience, their personalities, their outlooks is really valuable to us, and we have a bit of a job to do ourselves to do that. So we're on to our final myth. We have a fantastic speaker who's going to do this one solo. Her name is Sarah Firth. So Sarah has worked in the PR industry for over 30 years. So Sarah's going to be talking to us about, is PR a young person's game? So Sarah's worked in the industry for over 30 years, most of it spent as a creative director. She wrote her first press release on a typewriter and her most recent one on Alexa. As Speed Strategy and Creative Director, she oversees creative direction for all the agency's campaigns, leading on unlocking audience insight. Most recently, she co-founded Anything But Grey, which is an agency offer focused to create a more colourful marketing to the over 50s. Sarah's happy for me to say her age. So at the age of 54, she started playing football again, having not kicked a ball since 1979. So the average age of young people working in creative agencies in the UK is 36. So that's in creative industries, according to the IPA census, which is younger than the average for other industries. So the question is PR a young person's game? Is there any value in having mixed generational workforces? And are agencies and organizations missing a trick, actually, by not embracing the older workforce or the older team member into their team? So Sarah, over to you.
Thanks, Kelly. I think I'm probably going to say something incredibly obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway because that's the kind of person I am. I think the one thing that really links all of these conversations and this myth busting is this word that we all keep coming back to, which is diversity and inclusion. And for me, ageism is the last taboo. It's the last conversation that people are having now, I think, in the diversity space. So I think for me, this question is really pertinent and really interesting, particularly right now. And I think if we take this concept of a young person's game, that kind of says to me two things. We're either saying, one, that it's full of young people, or the second element of that is that actually it's better suited to young people. So just to tackle the it's full of young people kind of myth on its head, as Kelly's just indicated, the average age of of people working in PR is 38. What I find really interesting about that is the average age of the general workforce is 41. So actually, we're already kind of quite a youngish organisation, I suppose, compared to the workforce. But what's even more interesting is those figures of average age of PR people is 38 actually comes from the PRCA census in 2021. That same census was done in 2016. And the average age of a PR person was 28. So just to kind of pull all of that maths together, in 5 years, the PR industry has aged itself by a decade. So clearly in the last 5 years, we have recognised the importance of lots of different generations in the workforce, because as an industry, we know that it's really important for our clients that we bring in as many different points of view, as many different conversations as possible. And I think to change that by a whole 10 years in 5 years in itself is an absolute triumph for the industry. So I think for anyone that's interested in PR, I think that what that says straight away is that as an industry, we're incredibly receptive and listening and learning to what's going on in society in general. And also that as an industry, we've been able to adapt to that. So just to take that other point of view, You know, so is PR a young person's game? Not really. And we've done a brilliant job at aging ourselves in the last 5 years to bring in more people from different generations. But is it better suited to a younger person? Well, again, having listened to the previous 6 speakers, there were 3 elements I felt that people were talking about: ability, versatility, and then the final one, I'm probably slightly controversial, mediocrity. Ability, I think, as Sarah and Steph talked about, Billy and Lindsay talked about, and also Jim and Julia talked about, when you work in PR, you need to come with quite a different set of skills, but all of those skills are embraced, whether that's about communication, whether that's about writing skills, whether that's about visual skills, whether that's about timekeeping or client handling skills. All of these are a massive and important part of what the modern PR practitioner needs to have. So I think ability, and that ability to develop new skills, is really important, which leads me on to the next point about versatility. To work in PR, you need to be incredibly versatile. Again, you're learning new stuff the whole time. You're picking up different conversations. You're immersed in one client sector, and then you quickly switch to another client sector. You have to be incredibly cognizant of what's going on the media agenda. And there's been some research done recently that actually the older you get, the better you are at becoming versatile. So again, this would kind of say to me that the industry is really well set up for people of lots of different generations. And in fact, older people are showing that they are much more happy to embrace different experiences. And then my final point about mediocrity, I'm not suggesting for a minute that you have to be mediocre to be in PR. I mean, clearly I would probably lose my job and be chucked off this webinar if I was advocating that. What I would say, though, is it has been proven that older generations are less likely to accept anything mediocre. And what that means is that we have a very, very, very high threshold of what's good and what isn't. And also what we think our clients would like to see and need to see. And therefore, we're perfectionists in some sense, the older we get. So again, it would suggest to me that actually older people have got a really important place in the industry. But I don't just want to sit here and talk about older people, because then I'm doing my own sort of job of not being very diverse. Kelly mentioned this conversation around mixed generations. And actually, there's been a huge amount of research done recently. Reed, who's one of the biggest recruitment businesses out there, talk about this extensively, that we're now facing potentially 8 different generations in the workplace. And again, what that means is any employer and any industry needs to be set up brilliantly to deal with people with different experiences, different life stages, different kind of conversations that need to have inside the workplace and outside the workplace. And I think, and my experience of PR is, it's perfectly well set up to do that. I think we need to ensure that those conversations keep happening, but we are so well place, I think, to embrace people with different aspects. And I've got my own personal experience of this. Last year, when we were coming back after lockdown, and there were some new faces in the office, and quite naturally I was sat next to somebody, and we struck up a conversation. And this person I was sat next to said, "Yeah, this is my first role. This is my first job." I said, "Oh, amazing! Are you sort of fresh out of college, or maybe?" She said, "Yeah, I'm 23." And I was like, "Oh, crikey, I'm 53. There's 3 decades between me and this person." And I did my usual thing of going, I feel a bit embarrassed because I'm so much older than she is, and is this going to be tricky, and what do I say, and how do I cover it up? And I was the one that had the problem. The perception of my age was more of an issue for me than it was for this 23-year-old, who immediately turned around and went, "Oh yeah, great to meet you. Have you seen these new rug cleaning videos on TikTok?" And that was it, end of the conversation. So what I would say is age shouldn't be a barrier for anyone, particularly if you're wondering about entering PR for the first time and you are a bit older. I would say it is a great industry to be in, to really embrace your different skills and your different experiences. Kelly, I don't know if you've got any points or anything that I've just garbled out very quickly there.
No, I think what would be interesting, because you made a point around coming into the industry and why it's valuable and multi-generational and the value that it has for an organization. I'm interested in obstacles. I think there is a statistic that around the number of individuals dropping out of the industry over the age of 50 for one reason or another. And what can we be doing as organizations to address some of the obstacles that those individuals may have faced. Whether that's training and fear of technology, or, I'm making assumptions that those are the obstacles, but what do we think the obstacles are, and what could we be doing to address those obstacles?
I mean, I think some of the things that you've just mentioned are absolutely right. I think it's about finding out what people need first and foremost. And again, I think as an industry, we have done a brilliant job at becoming better at listening to people. And I was struck that by from what Sarah and Steph were saying, that actually, I think again, it is about understanding what people need and how we can accommodate that and give people the chance to learn skills if they need to learn new skills, to look at people's life stages and lifestyles as well. Because again, I'm such a huge advocate of people bringing their different experiences when they're comfortable to do so into the workplace. I think that's how we create much better work for our clients. So how do we accommodate people who might have, different flexible needs in terms of hours that they work and all of those kinds of things. We're all set up to work from home now, so that shouldn't be a barrier for any business looking to employ someone, and equally for anyone feeling confident about where their place is within that workplace as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. So we've had our 4 speakers who were amazing. I think there are some overriding messages there around embracing diversity. Each of the areas touched on, if we have workforces that have introverts and extroverts, and in that spectrum, the value that delivers. If we embrace gender neutrality and look at individuals based on their skills and their aspirations and their passions, and what can we do to nurture them, that's the most important thing. And also having figures from a senior perspective, or experienced figures that are inspiration to people outside of the industry in terms of what the opportunities are. And then in terms of writing, that it's about multiple skills as the industry continues to change, different channels that we are using. We heard from both Jim and Julia talking from a digital and a video perspective. It's about embracing the different skills that people have, the different outlooks that they have, what they can bring to their organizations in terms of their comms expertise, and how we can also nurture those skills. And then finally from Sarah, talking about diversity from a generational perspective, and the fact that you can have a huge amount of value that's delivered to your organization by having a multi-generational workforce that is reflective of brands and wider society and the communities that we are serving. So, for me, there is an overriding message with these myths that we need to debunk and do a job from a PR perspective about embracing diversity and the value that can deliver. We're just going to move on to questions. There was one question that's come up particularly for Sarah and Steph. Is, as an introvert who likes working alone a lot of the time, how do you manage working with difficult stakeholders, particularly in an in-house role? And do you think agency or in-house is more suited to introverts?
It's a good question, and I'll probably leap in just because I've done both agency and in-house, and then Steph might have something to add after. I think that I'm really good at tricky stakeholders, and I've had my fair share, because I listen, and I work with some very senior people who have very difficult jobs to do, and because I can really connect with them and really empathize in a meaningful way that is authentic, they feel listened to and they feel heard, and therefore they are more likely to listen to what my suggestion is. I still have to prove myself. I still have to produce gold standard work. I still have to convince them that it's the right solution and show them why it's working, just as we all do in that sort of standard PR cycle. But I would say that I bring something extra. I do have to spend the time. I do have to spend the time to get to know people. But actually, in an organization that's completely national, we're all on Zoom. So that helps. But actually, interestingly, when I do find that there is a particularly sticky point, I go in person and I will spend time in person. And all those sort of introvert skills of reading body language, understanding sort of social cues, that means that I'm really able to kind of get under the skin quite quickly of what the issue actually is. And in my experience with senior stakeholders or any stakeholders, often the problem is not what they're saying the problem is something else. So you need to get in there and understand what's happening and then give them the right solution. So does any of that resonate with you, Steph?
Definitely. I think that was the point I was going to make. It's about using those really core listening skills that you have to really understand the problem, which I think will serve you really well as an introvert with those more difficult situations that you find yourself in.
Yeah. I had a question around career progression and extroverts and introverts. You know, the perception is that extroverts are louder, more likely to talk about their achievements, more likely to be overheard in the office, more likely to be seen and heard, potentially, against potentially an introvert, which may be more confident and focused on the job and not necessarily be shouting left, right, and centre about the things that they're achieving or what they're delivering. How do we ensure that people are treated equally in respect of career progression, that it isn't those that shout the loudest or that are the most vocal are the ones that are recognised?
I think if I can sort of think about, as Billy did, sort of going back to sort of line managers and those people who I've really grown under, and I have a number of people who've really helped me in my career. I think it's those people that take the time to listen. And I think that the loudest voice in the room is not always the right voice. Not that it needs to be a sort of right-wrong dichotomy, but it's just a helpful way of kind of putting it. And certainly in my own position now in a leadership role, I take time to go and find the person and say, what did you think about that? And then get the answer. And often it will be the killer solution that I'd not thought about, that they sort of give to me. So I think it is just sort of mindfully making a little bit more space. And it might feel like it's more effort, and it might feel like, oh, well, the extrovert just comes to me with a solution that's easy. I think that's the operative word. Just because it is easy does not mean that you're getting to where you need to get to. And sometimes, as ever in PR, the most difficult, complex stuff takes a bit more time, but you get to that kind of killer solution. What do you think, Steph?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think, like Sarah said, having the space to talk to everybody is really important. Obviously, a meeting with everybody involved is just one aspect of how we all get together as teams. I think in office provides, breakout rooms to make sure that you're talking to everyone. And also, I think working from home and hybrid working has also allowed more space for people to have those more kind of private one-to-one conversations as well. So yeah, taking the time to work those into the diary and make sure that everybody is heard is crucial.
Yeah, thank you. Quick question for Jim and Julia. How do people come into the industry and showcase skills from a video, for example, or digital perspective? What is the best way for individuals who are coming new into the industry to demonstrate those skills in an interview process or in a showcase process, to ensure that they can get their foot in?
I would always have a link on a CV to some kind of showcase of your work. Ideally, a range of things that you've made, rather than just, there is a sort of propensity for a sort of highlights reel, but that doesn't really tell me a great deal, because that's just the best bits clubbed together, which may be on the surface impressive, but we work over a huge range of different clients. So I'd like to see a sort of a more of a sort of a detailed look at what someone does. But to be honest, what we really look for is enthusiasm and excitement and passion. We can teach the rest to an extent. Just thinking some of the people that we've had on our team over the years that have come in with some experience, some relevant material on their CV with a decent show reel, but a long way from what we would sort of be requiring long term, but because of their passion and their commitment and their desire to learn and to become experts on the job, then we gave them a job. And we've had great successes. Some of them are still with us, some of them moved on to other bigger and better things. Not better things, different things. Not better things, different things. But yeah, so I think, show what you can do your research, understand how production is now a part of PR, at least have a sense of what that is, and then just impress with your enthusiasm. It's a fairly trite answer, but I think there's still a lot of truth in that.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, Jim, if someone's kind of very new into the industry, so let's say paid digital advertising, I want to know that they are just interested in that world, that they care about things like Google updates and the different kind of some of the intricacies perhaps around PPC, for example, and just that they are kind of reading about that sort of thing and just have a bit of a nerdy enjoyment of it. If you're brand new, you're not going to necessarily work on a load of PPC campaigns, but and also something we do in interviews is we might ask a question around kind of paid digital, for example, and I don't necessarily care about the answer. I just want to see that you're thinking about it in a specific way, in an analytical way, in a way that is the sort of skills that we need for someone who's going to be working on those kind of campaigns. I'm specifically talking about paid digital, but there are lots of other that kind of applies to any kind of skill set I'm looking for in my team. Just that enthusiasm and excitement, and often a bit of nerdiness as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I can see that we are out of time, but we're on time, which is just miraculous. I want to thank all my panelists for conversations on the debunking of those myths. There's some really, really interesting points made. I think, like I said, the overriding message that I've heard is around embracing diversity. And the value that can have for the organizations you work within, but also your fellow team members. And, is an industry that really needs to value and secure great talent, making our businesses as diverse and doing a job ourselves in PR, PRing the industry by relaying those messages, I think is going to be a really important role that we all need to play to get those messages out there about the value that we put upon diversity. So thank you again to all of my panelists for giving up your time. I hope people attending found it really interesting. It's being recorded and will be shared more widely, but thank you everyone, and it's been a real joy and a great conversation.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Kelly.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Kelly.